Step back into Franklin's Philadelphia dining room where every dish told a story. From Native American succotash to unexpected tofu, Franklin's table wasn't just about eating, it was about identity, survival, and diplomacy. These 10 foods reveal how one founding father used meals to shape a nation. Stay with us and discover the surprising flavors that built America. If you love uncovering history through food, hit like and subscribe for more. Cornmeal pancakes with honey or maple syrup. Close your eyes and imagine a colonial hearth in Philadelphia, the fire crackling and a skillet sizzling with golden cornmeal batter. The sweet, nutty aroma fills the air as pancakes are stacked higher and higher, not with imported sugar drizzled on top, but with wild honey or maple syrup tapped from American trees. This was Benjamin Franklin's quiet rebellion served on a plate. Wheat had to be shipped across the ocean, costly and fragile. Corn, however, grew strong in Pennsylvania, soil, cheap, filling, dependable. To Franklin, cornmeal wasn't just food, it was a declaration America could feed itself without bowing to Europe's imports. Each bite of those pancakes whispered independence long before the revolution roared. Picture Franklin at his table offering guests these humble cakes not merely as breakfast, but as a statement of pride in the land. In their sweetness, you taste resilience. In their simplicity, you see the beginnings of a nation learning to stand on its own. Indian corn succotash, the Three Sisters. Now, step away from the skillet and picture a heavy wooden bowl set on Franklin's table filled with corn, beans, and squash. At first glance, it looks simple, almost rustic. But this dish, known as succotash, carried the wisdom of Native American fields. The Three Sisters, grown together in harmony, each plant giving life to the other. Corn climbed tall and strong, beans curled around its stalks for support, while broad squash leaves shaded the soil, keeping it moist. Franklin admired this ingenious partnership, praising it in his writings as nourishment, both practical and profound. One spoonful gave energy, protein, and vitamins, a complete meal born of ancestral knowledge. At a table glinting with silverware and fine wines, this humble bowl stood as proof that America already held the keys to survival and prosperity within its own soil. Franklin promoted it not as poor man's food, but as a model of independence, simple, sustaining, and proudly American. From cornmeal pancakes to succotash, Franklin wasn't just serving meals. He was planting seeds of identity. Cranberries with maple syrup. Imagine a frosty New England morning, the ground kissed with snow and baskets filled with small ruby red cranberries. Franklin loved these tart little berries so much that he asked friends to send them overseas when he was in London or Paris. On his Philadelphia table, they often appeared sweetened with a drizzle of maple syrup, the wild sharpness softened by American sweetness. For Franklin, cranberries were more than a seasonal treat. They carried the taste of home, a reminder that America offered flavors no European pudding or French wine could ever rival. Each bite was a tug of nostalgia, connecting him to winters of his youth. But there was practicality too. Franklin believed cranberries helped prevent scurvy, making them as medicinal as they were comforting. Picture guests spooning the glistening berries beside roasted meats, their tart bite waking the senses. In that simple dish, Franklin found both survival and sentiment, a marriage of science and memory that bound him to his land. From hardy cornfields to bright berries, Franklin's meals revealed a truth: America's strength was rooted in its own earth. Which of these first three dishes, pancakes, succotash, or cranberries, would you want most on your own table today? Drinking chocolate. Now shift the scene from Franklin's dining room to his cluttered study. Papers scatter across the desk, experiments wait in jars, and beside them, no tankard of ale, but a steaming cup of thick spiced chocolate. Before coffee swept America, hot cocoa was the drink of choice, and Franklin adored it. He even imported cocoa beans himself, selling drinking chocolate in his Philadelphia print shop. To him, this wasn't indulgence, it was fuel. Unlike beer, which dulled the mind, chocolate sharpened it, warming both body and thought. Franklin saw it as the perfect companion for late nights, drafting letters, or testing inventions. And ever the pragmatist, he promoted cocoa for soldiers too, suggesting it be packed into military supplies during the French and Indian War, a ration of strength and comfort in a single sip. Imagine the morale of a weary soldier lifted by the rich velvety warmth of cocoa on a cold night. Here, chocolate wasn't just sweetness. It was innovation in a cup, a glimpse of how even small comforts could power big ideas. Roast turkey. Picture a golden bird pulled from the hearth, its skin crisp and glistening, steam rising as Franklin's guests leaned in to carve generous slices. This was roast turkey, plentiful, hearty, and proudly American. Franklin loved it so much he once argued the turkey, not the bald eagle, should be our national bird. To him, the eagle was a scavenger, but the turkey a noble creature of courage. At his Philadelphia table, a turkey wasn't just meat on a platter. It was a symbol of honest labor abundance from American soil, and a centerpiece around which families and statesmen alike gathered. Over gravy and stuffing, ideas of independence may well have been whispered, the humble bird feeding both body and revolution. Franklin valued practicality, and turkey fit that vision, perfectly native to the land, easy to raise, and able to feed a crowd. Each feast reminded him and his guests that America could thrive from its own resources. If you're enjoying this trip through Franklin's forgotten table, hit like and subscribe for more journeys into America's food history. Tofu. Now imagine Franklin abroad in London, pen in hand, writing to a fellow scientist about a curious discovery: cheese made from beans. He was describing tofu, the very first mention of it in American history. Long before it ever reached mainstream kitchens, Franklin had already encountered soybeans through his global network and was fascinated by this strange plant-based curd from Asia. For most colonists, it was unimaginable, but Franklin saw potential where others saw novelty. Tofu was cheap, rich in protein, and required no herds of cattle to produce. In a world where food shortages were common, he envisioned it as a solution nourishment that could help a young nation grow strong. Picture the contrast. One night, Franklin feasts on roast turkey with Madeira wine. Another, he jots notes about soybean cheese, wondering how it might benefit America's future. To him, tofu wasn't foreign, it was innovation, a taste of possibility carried across oceans. From cornfields to cranberries, from cocoa to soybeans, Franklin's table was as much a laboratory as a dining room. Pepper pot soup. Close your eyes and picture a harsh Pennsylvania winter. Snow piles high, fires burn low, and the air smells of wood smoke. On Franklin's table sat a steaming bowl of pepper pot soup, thick, bold, and spiced with hot peppers. Made from tripe vegetables and whatever scraps could be found, this dish became legendary as the soup that won the Revolution. It was served to Washington's starving troops at Valley Forge, warming them through the bitter cold. But long before that, Franklin knew pepper pot well. It was a staple of Philadelphia kitchens, shaped by West Indian influences and adapted into something hearty enough to fuel survival. Unlike delicate European broths, pepper pot was no nonsense. It carried the story of resilience in every spoonful, stretching humble ingredients into a meal that nourished both body and spirit. For Franklin, who admired thrift and ingenuity, it was a perfect symbol of endurance. From delicate tofu experiments to fiery pepper pot, his table proved that survival and sophistication could sit side by side. Stuffed lobster. Now lift your gaze from the humble pepper pot to a dish of pure spectacle, a bright red lobster split open and filled with breadcrumbs, herbs, butter, and a splash of wine. Stuffed lobster wasn't everyday food in Franklin's Philadelphia. It was a luxury, a centerpiece meant to dazzle. Franklin, who spent years in France, developed a taste for fine seafood, and bringing such a dish to his American table was more than indulgence. It was a statement. Lobster symbolized connection, the old world of European refinement, meeting the new world's abundance. When guests saw it gleaming on the table, they weren't just impressed by flavor, they were reminded that America could match Europe bite for bite. Picture the clatter of forks, the buttery aroma filling the room, the way conversation paused as guests took their first taste. Stuffed lobster was food as theater, Franklin's way of blending showmanship with substance. As we climb into the final two dishes, the question lingers. What could rival such elegance and still capture the very soul of America? Apple dumplings with cream sauce. From the splendor of stuffed lobster, let's return to something far humbler but perhaps even more beloved. Imagine whole apples wrapped in dough, boiled or baked until tender, then drenched in cream or a sweet sauce. These were apple dumplings, a dessert so common in Pennsylvania kitchens that Franklin himself saw them as both comfort and proof of America's abundance. The fragrance of cinnamon and stewed apples filled Colonial homes, a scent that spoke of harvest time and family gathering. Guests at Franklin's table would cut into a steaming dumpling, the crust giving way to soft spiced fruit juices spilling into rich cream. It wasn't fancy like a French confection, but it was deeply satisfying, rustic joy dressed in simplicity. Apples, hardy and plentiful, were a democratic fruit. Every household could make dumplings, from farm families to Franklin's refined guests. And in that accessibility lay their charm. A dish so modest it brought everyone to the same table. Only one dish remains a final symbol that was less about hunger and more about history. If you're enjoying this journey, your comments keep these memories alive. Share yours below. Champagne with French pastries. And now at the very top of Franklin's table, we find not a humble staple, but a glittering symbol of diplomacy: champagne with French pastries. Picture Franklin in Paris raising a delicate flute of golden bubbles while nibbling on flaky croissants or sugared puffs. For a man of Quaker roots, this might seem extravagant, but for Franklin, it was strategy as much as pleasure. These were the evenings where alliances were forged. Every sparkling toast was more than indulgence. It was a step toward securing France's support for the Revolution. The pastries, light and elegant, carried the artistry of French kitchens, while champagne embodied celebration, trust, and connection. When Franklin brought these influences back to Philadelphia, he wasn't just savoring sweetness, he was carrying proof that America could stand shoulder to shoulder with Europe, not only on the battlefield, but at the table. Here, dessert became diplomacy bubbles, became bridges, and Franklin's table transformed into a stage for independence. If you've loved rediscovering these forgotten flavors of America's beginnings, hit like and subscribe so these stories never fade. Looking back across Franklin's Philadelphia table, we see more than meals. We see a nation being shaped one dish at a time. Cornmeal, pancakes, and succotash spoke of native wisdom. Cranberries and cocoa reminded him of both survival and comfort. Roast turkey became a symbol of identity, while tofu hinted at a daring curiosity for the future. From pepper pot soup that fed soldiers to apple dumplings that warmed families, every plate told a story of resilience. And at the very top, champagne with French pastries was more than sweetness, it was diplomacy, building bridges that secured America's independence. Food for Franklin was never just about taste. It was memory, ingenuity, and a vision for what America could become. Which of these dishes speaks most to you? Would you choose the humble pancakes, the fiery pepper pot, or the elegance of champagne and pastries? Share your thoughts below. If you've enjoyed this journey through forgotten flavors of America, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share so that these stories of food, family, and freedom live on.